Good morning, everyone. I'm just testing the microphone here, but I would like to thank you all for coming out early to this event. This event is not something regularly scheduled. It is an initiative that has grown out here at MSU. We've been pursuing this initiative now for the last 6 months or so, and we're trying to do something very, very new at MSU when it comes to understanding the brain. We've had a workshop a month ago where we brought together basically researchers at MSU from very diverse disciplines, ranging from neuroscience, of course, cognitive sciences, over humanities, music, art, and so on. Everybody who is studying the brain came together to talk to each other and see if they have a common interest in understanding the brain. Now, you might say, well, yes, of course, the brain is interesting, and we would like to understand how it works, and it would be good to have an institute devoted to that, but there are plenty of institutes out there in the United States and the world that are dedicated to studying the brain. Why would you want to start a new one, and why here? That is a question that you should be able to answer. And I think we do have a very good reason why we want to do something like this here. We do indeed want to do something very, very new. And that is, we would like to harness the power of computation and the power of evolution for understanding brains. And not just the human brain. Of course, the human brain, and in particular human intelligence, is interesting to all of us. But when you take an evolutionary approach, you realize that brains are interesting on all scales. Whether it's the brain of a leech, the brain of a mouse, or the brain of let's say a hyena. All of these brains are functionally extremely interesting, and interestingly for us, connected by evolution. Now, MSU is the host of a very successful research center funded by the National Science Foundation, the Beacon Center for the Study of Evolution in Action. And we have been able here at MSU to concentrate work in evolution that, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't have any match anywhere else in the world. So this, in a sense, being the center of using evolution not to understand the process itself, but also as an engineering tool, has given us the opportunity here to do something very new. So how can a computational and evolutionary approach to the brain get us where other approaches perhaps have not gotten us? And I think the answer is that as far as the process of engineering brains is concerned, this has been an extraordinarily difficult path for pretty much everybody. If you ask anyone who has been involved in attempting to engineer the brain, they will at some point tell you, well, it's very difficult because we don't know how the brain works. That is essentially the barrier that is put in front of anybody trying to do this. Now, of course, you all understand that there is a process that we know has created all the brains that we have on this planet, and that is the process of evolution. So if we are here at MSU, in a sense the best at understanding this process, why shouldn't we be able to harness the power of evolution to actually allow us to understand step by step, from very simple brains to more complex brain, how this thing works? And that is the proposition here. Now, of course, if I say that an institute like that would have a synthesis focus, in the sense that we would like to actually make brains using the evolutionary process, then you might say, well, I don't think you could do this. Nobody has been able to do this. Why do you think you can do this? And the answer is, well, it is actually very difficult. However, we have now sufficient amount of empirical and theoretical evidence that we have some idea how to do this. And in fact, as some of the talks today will show, we have been able to make sufficient progress that you can have confidence that this is indeed an avenue that we can take, and where the products of such a computational synthesis process will be interesting for those people who actually, take empirical data and try to understand brains of actual organisms. Okay? So, while of course the ultimate goal of such an endeavor would be human intelligence, it turns out that if you take an evolutionary approach, every step on the way is already a valuable and interesting contribution. So it's almost like you might say that the journey towards human intelligence is as valuable as actually getting there at the very end. So the lineup of speakers that you will see today, I hope reflect to some extent the type of focus that this institute will have. This institute will have a very solid empirical component, because the one thing that I have learned, and that everybody who is in this field learns, is that you have to know as much about existing brains as you can. When I say that you want to have an engineering process that gets you closer towards functioning, appropriately functioning complex brains, brains do not evolve in a vacuum. You have to create the infrastructure where this evolutionary process can take hold. And if you did not set up the right structure, the right computational structure, you have no chance for this working. And one of the reasons why I think this is working, or can work, is in fact the contributions of our next speaker, Jeff Hawkins. Jeff, in a sense, is one of these extraordinarily persistent people, because he's been interested in the brain for a very long time. It's just that his interest in the brain was a little bit ahead of the type of graduate departments that he tried to apply to. And after he got rejected from either the computer science people because they didn't want to really deal with neuroscience, or the neuroscience department because they really didn't want to deal with computers, he decided, what the heck, I'll just make a lot of money and fund my own research institute. Now, I've heard many people say something like that before. It's very few people who actually pull this off, and Jeff, of course, is the founder of Palm Computing and the founder of Handspring, and was extremely successful, but then actually did exactly what he said he would. Namely, he took the money that he made from these companies and started the Redwood Theoretical Neuroscience Center. And after he created that center, which in a sense is still in existence, he created a company called Numenta, where he would implement his ideas about the cortical algorithm. I first met Jeff 5 years ago at one of these Google conferences, and I had actually read his book by the time I got there. And once I was through with reading the book, and once I had talked to him, I realized that Jeff had made a singular and very important observation, which is a theoretical observation, namely that there may be a universal algorithm towards how the brain works. And it was from that point on where I realized that, well, if there is in fact such an algorithm, we may have a chance to actually make brains, because if you have some clue, that's what I mean with the infrastructure, the computational infrastructure, on how the brain computes, then we may actually have a chance of understanding the brain. So I'm very happy that Jeff was able to come here and talk to us about, a little bit about how how this idea came about, and how in fact he's using his insight into cortical algorithms to create engineering solutions that use this principle. Now, while Jeff is clearly on the engineering side, and I'm on the computational side, in a sense we have a lot of, on the evolution side, we have a lot of things in common, because the framework that I'm using in order to move evolution forward is precisely the framework that Jeff had described in his book on intelligence. Which, by the way, I should say, everybody who's interested in intelligence and how the brain works should take a look at that book. It came out in 2004. I have yet to meet anyone who's read this book and was not fascinated by the ideas that were put forward there. So, without further ado, Jeff, please. Okay. Switch.